This interview has been conducted for the Queers in Elder Care and Oral History project. My name is Dr. Sue Morrison and the respondent is David Allan. This is August 2022 and the interview is taking place in David's home. Thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed for the project.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
For the record, would you please confirm your full name?
My name is David Allan.
Thank you. Would you mind giving me your age or just your year of birth?
I never remember this. I'm 64.
Thank you. Where were you born?
I was born in Ayrshire.
Whereabouts?
I grew up in Ayrshire, outside Irvine. You know Irvine? Well, I grew up in the countryside in a little cottage in the middle of a field. It was me and my mum and my sister because my dad was in the fire service. And at that time in the fire service, you stayed in the fire station for like 4 or 5 days. You did like 5 days off, on and 3 days off or something. So it was just my mum and me and my sister in this cottage in the middle of a field, in the middle of nowhere. And it was the main Glasgow Stranraer Road, was the road, so we weren't allowed to go across it, so we never saw anyone. And my mum had, my dad's family don't know, but my mum had 11 brothers and sisters and none of them had any kids. So all the people coming to the house were just adults. So I went to school and there was all these people the same size as me. I'd never really played with kids. I couldn't play any of the games, which was really, because I'd never played with kids before. I'd never mixed with kids before, apart from just a few odd occasions. So I hadn't grown up like in the village or anything like that. So
how did that make you feel?
It was strange. It was really, thinking back, it was really weird because it was probably my first experience of being ostracised, and being different from other people. And I don't know whether that's perhaps that's what's helped me deal with or cope with being different, to use that word, throughout my life. And it's never really bothered me being different again, or being not fitted in with what other people do. And I think it is part of that upbringing, part of that initial, I was 6 when we moved into the village. So those initial 6 years of just being on our own, basically, and having to get through and do things by yourself in what was quite a, not a harsh existence, but things were different back then, sort of stuff. It was very, we didn't have a lot of money, and my mum, for example, didn't drive, so we couldn't leave the cottage, apart from to walk, sort of stuff. So we had to wait for Dad to come home. So what I think now, what it must have been like for this poor woman, my mother, stuck in this cottage in the middle of nowhere with 2 kids, for 5 days at a time, no telephone, hoping that one of her sisters might decide to visit, waiting in the post. We used to get letters to say that people would be visiting the next day and things. So yes, I think that perhaps maybe gave me a good grounding for the fact that I could be ostracised or left out of things later in life, So that's why I sailed through ostracisation, if that's a word. I don't even know if that's a word. So that's where I was. But I came to Glasgow originally in the late 70s and then came permanently about 40 years ago. So I've been in Glasgow's my home now. I've been in Glasgow for 40 years. And because I've always really lived in the inner city, people think I'm a right city boy, so they're surprised that I can do things like I can catch a rabbit and kill it and skin it and cook it. So if there's an apocalypse, stick with me, I'll feed us, and I'm very practical, so I can do things. And part of that is sort of my country upbringing where you had to be practical. And part of that as well, as we'll be talking about that in a wee minute, is about being queer, because you find that lots of queer people are very practical, and because they have to be, because nobody else would do it for them.
Could I just clarify something? You use the term queer.
Yes.
Some people find that offensive.
Yes.
Could you explain why you prefer the term queer?
Well, I stopped using the term gay, which I never really used very much anyway. It's only in the past, I don't know, a few years or whatever it was, that I've actually started identifying myself as anything, because people have started identifying themselves as things, because there's so many labels now. I used to say that I've never ever told anyone that I was gay because it was so obvious and nobody ever had to ask, and I never ever used the words. But I very consciously decided not to use the word gay because gay has become adopted in sometimes very heteronormative behaviours. And if you present as gay nowadays in a heterosexual society, what people's idea of being gay is basically fitting into heteronormative ideas. So you get married, you get a Land Rover, you live in an estate, you get a Labradoodle, you adopt a child, and you basically have a heterosexual lifestyle. And what is really weird, the only other sort of, and I'll use words like acceptable, I'm not that extreme, but I'm using it to make it easy. The only other way that sort of like heterosexual society will think you're fine and not a problem is if you're a drag queen. And that's because you're entertainment. So, you get 16-year-olds who just want to be a bit different, and their mums are saying, why can't you be like Barry and John who live up the road, have got the poodle? Or why can't you be like Jason who's a drag queen and got his gran on the float at Pride? So there's these two extremes of heteronormative behaviour. So gay has started to become used to explain those lifestyles. And people who don't fit within those lifestyles, which I have never done, I've never fitted into either of those lifestyles. If you present as gay, people then criticise you. Because you can't be gay. Where's your husband? Where's your Land Rover? Where's your Labradoodle? Or where's your drag outfit? So you're not really gay. You're something else. So I started identifying as queer, which at the time and nowadays sort of defines more what I do, which basically means I don't fit into this sort of heteronormative idea of being gay. Sort of stuff. So much of gay lifestyle has become mainstream now. It's been adopted by mainstream society, and that is very difficult for older people to deal with, older queer people to deal with, and in many ways can be seen as quite insulting and annoying, I would say. It's like, how dare they stick pride flags on the front of Santander? Bank, and what they done for me, all these people done for a life, just had a lifetime of abuse, and discrimination. So that's why I identify as queer, as opposed to gay, because people's ideas of gay is basically fits into a heteronormative society.
How many people within your sphere would use the same term, do you think?
Queer? I would say, of my queer friends, maybe coming up to about 50% nowadays. Some people use both, depending on what situation they're in. Some people, most people, almost everyone is quite happy to use both. Most people, almost everyone again, within society, if you say queer, they understand where you're coming from, sort of stuff. Some people use gay just because they prefer it. They don't agree with the heteronormative stuff. They certainly don't agree with me with the heteronormative stuff, that's fine. But they just use gay because that's what they like doing, sort of stuff. But also, queer society, gay society is just like any other society. We don't all go to Pride. We don't all want to wear, gold hot pants and dance to Kylie. We don't all want to go to discos. We don't all want to have fake tans. We don't want to do all these things that gay people are supposed to do, sort of stuff. And it's just like any other bit of society. If you take, it's like, I presume, everyone has this idea, rightly or wrongly, of what, say, a Muslim is like. But of course we're all wrong, because we're just like everyone else. You get 9 million different kinds, and it's just, in queer society it's just the same. People are amazed that I don't go to Pride, but also I don't go to Pride because I was banned from Pride in the early days, because they didn't want me, because in the early days the chant and the, the campaign was, we are just like you, and you can't do we are just like you if I'm rolling up in my pink Dior coat, and my yellow wedgie heels and stuff with a bag, and remember, men didn't have bags. Up until the 90s and sort of lad culture and laptops started, men didn't have bags, and I've always had a bag, and I don't mean a handbag, but a bag, like a sort of bag that men have now, because it was easier. And there was also the thing, and I don't know whether this was a colloquial thing or whether it's, I must check it out, whether it's a Scotland-wide thing or where it is. Having a handbag was a euphemism for being queer amongst, it's what sort of like nice ladies would say. They wouldn't say, oh, he's a poof or something, they would say, oh, blah, blah, blah. Is that Robert married? And like my auntie would say, no, he's got a handbag. And that meant he was queer. So me actually physically having a bag was like a big signal. So if I went to Pride or something, I attracted a lot of attention, either negative attention, so all the abuse and bricks would start, or if there was a photographer or the newspaper that they just wanted to take pictures of me because I was a strange looking thing, where it was all these guys in jeans and cheesecloth shirts saying, with moustaches saying, we're just like you, and then me swinging my bag, sort of stuff. But that used to happen a lot, a lot of the, discrimination doesn't just happen in gay society, it happens in queer society as well, I used to work on Gay Switchboard, which it doesn't exist anymore in Strathclyde, it closed down. I worked there for a long time. I worked mainly at the weekends, busy time. And afterwards, when it closed, we closed I think at 10 and the pubs were open till 11, whatever it was. Sometimes the guys wouldn't want me to go to the pub with them or sit with them in the pub because other queer people wouldn't come and speak to them because I was this strange thing, because I drew too much attention, and at that time it was all about blending in. And I didn't draw the attention to myself because I wanted to, it's just that's the way I am, sort of stuff. I've always liked fashion, I've always liked high fashion, couture fashion, I've always liked colourful things and stuff like that. So, so that was it. So yes, so there was a lot of that sort of thing went on, and you just ride it out. So yeah, so queer people are all different, just like everyone else, sort of stuff. And one of the issues with accessing any service is that, again, people just automatically presume that you're just like everyone else. That's the same, say, for women, the old jokes about, a woman going to a garage, all the guys will just presume that she knows absolutely nothing about the car, sort of stuff. So any queer person going anywhere, and certainly anywhere that people are going to provide a service to, it's a service industry, the assumptions are just made, sort of thing. Interestingly, something about, if you're queer, in the past if you were queer, and still to now, it was very difficult to access services, any sort of service, because either people just wouldn't give you a service, it was very difficult. And having people in your house was really difficult, because for a lot of queer people, you had to have privacy. Privacy was a big thing, because first of all, if you were usually in your neighbourhood, people got to know you, but there was this sort of like unwritten deal that you would keep quiet and keep your head down, sort of stuff, so you wouldn't go on anything. So any workman coming into your house, first of all, some workmen wouldn't come into your house. Then you needed a joiner or something, workmen wouldn't come into your house. Some of them would come in and then just leave. Some of them would come in and then you would get abuse. Some of them would come in and try to have sex with you. Some of them would come in and then talk about you in the pub, sort of stuff. So that's why a lot of queer people are very practical. You get a lot of queer people who can fix plumbing and hang wallpaper and things. You just had to learn to do these things by yourself. It was easier as well. Also, people come into people's houses and just assume things, even if they don't know. They see a photograph and say, oh, is this your son? No, actually, it's my lover. Is this your, blah, blah. Oh, do you live here by yourself? Because they look at things and go, do you live here by yourself? He's got flowers. He's got flowers. It's very, I've had that, I've had the police come, I remember the police came to my house one and I could see this policeman going, and he actually said, do you live here by yourself? Because he was thinking, this looks a bit feminine, sort of stuff. And then he went, right, So having anyone into your environment is very difficult, of accessing any sort of service like that was always very difficult. So the accessing services where you actually need somebody to do something physically for you is really difficult, and when you have to share your information, it's unbelievably difficult, because you've had to hide yourself for years, and that's been part of the deal. You've had to hide yourself, and people would also, in the past, people might be able to take that information and do bad things with it, literally bad things. In the past, people could take a letter and go to the police and you could get put in prison, because you'd signed a kiss at the bottom of a letter to a man's name or something. So suddenly, say, to talk about a care environment, you go into a care home or anywhere like that, and here's this very nice person who think they're being helpful and say, just tell me all about yourself. Now, where are you born? What's this, blah, blah, blah? And you think, I'm not telling you anything. And even if you don't want to tell them, there's something in you that's telling you, saying, don't tell them, just don't tell them. What are they going to do with this? What are they going to do with this information? What are they going to do? What's going to happen to this information? And it may sound very odd now, and it will sound odd, but I remember in the 70s, there used to be this thing about, don't tell anybody anything. And the 70s, which people forget, was only like 30 years after the war. And the Nazis in the 30s made being a transvestite and transsexual legal as long as you registered. So everybody registered and immediately was gathered up and taken away and killed because they registered. So there is, and people used to talk about that and said, don't give anybody your name and address, remember the Nazis, So we still have that sort of ingrained in us. You don't tell anybody anything, and you don't give anyone any information, and you certainly don't let them take away. So when you've suddenly got kind people wanting to help you and say, just what is it you would like? I'm not telling you anything. Well, why would I tell you? And that's from one organisation. I was talking to someone at the weekend, Tracy, this woman who, and she's moved because of her physical issues. She's had to move from, getting just general support to care support, and the company she got general support with aren't allowed by law to give the care support company her information, which she understands, but she says that means I've got to go through all this again. I've got to tell everyone, and she doesn't want to know everything. She says, why do they need to know my mother's bloody maiden name? Why do they need to know this? What do they need to this? And they think they're being helpful. And it's not, I just want somebody to come and change my incontinence pad. Just come and change the incontinence pad. You don't need to know all this. Oh, we've got to write it down for health's sake. Why do you need to write it down? So access and privacy and things are an issue. There's a little trick which I'll tell you with workmen, which I don't know how, if it might work for women. You know how workmen come to a house very patronising. Lots of gay men do this. If workmen are coming to your house, wear a boiler suit. Because a workman sees a boiler suit and they go, all right, it's somebody who does that. And they treat you totally different. I've got a boiler suit, I've always worn a boiler suit when a workman comes to my house. And they treat you totally different. It's just because all they see is a man in boiler suit, man in boiler suit. And then you occasionally go, oh. But honestly, it works. So lots of gay men have boiler suits because of that, So it's difficult. So these presumptions are made, but a lot of going into accessing care and going into a care environment when you're older, you're already bringing all these things with you about privacy, about ostracisation, about having to stay in your own little bubble. And that's why you find a lot of queer couples, particularly female queer couples, just are in this little bubble by themselves. They sort of shut themselves off. And people say, oh, they just, there used to be jokes about, what these women do, they just sort of like, as soon as they've got a partner, they get a cat, they shut themselves away and stuff like that. But it's keeping yourself safe in your little bubble. Suddenly you're out of your wee bubble, and people want you to do things. They want you to mix. You're in an environment like a care environment, which people just presume everybody wants to mix. There's a day room. Everything's geared around that. The staff, there's hardly any staff. There's only 2 in the day room. You can't. If you stay in your room, you're a problem. So everything. So you're bringing all these things with you from the past, based on things that happened in the past. You're used to being private. It's ingrained in you that you're private. You tell people nothing. Suddenly they want to know your whole life story, and they're trying to be nice, and they're trying to. How should I say? Usually they try and overemphasise. They decide, of course, every gay person in the world is having rampant sex. So, of course, even if you're 87, you're in care, we have to talk about the sex. But have you done the sex talk and stuff? Do you want to put some music on? We'll put ABBA on. Yeah. Never tell anyone you like if you move into care home, never tell anyone you like anything. If you say, well, I quite like rabbits, your room will be full of rabbits. You can't say anything. Never say, oh, I like that song. You'll hear Julio Iglesias for the rest of your life. It's everything, unreal. People keep telling me, it's Pride just now, do you know that? Yes, no, not interested. Why are you not interested? Oh, come on, do you not want to go? I'll take you, we can take you, we can get a wheelchair, we can take you in a wheelchair. I don't want to go. Oh, why do you not want to go? Are you sad? So there is this push of people who think they're being very kind, who try and push you into very queer, heteronormative ideas of what being queer is, into this, as opposed to just seeing you as a person who likes watching Countdown and reading spy books and, filing your nails. And that's all you want to do. So you're bringing all these things with you. There's also something about, you're not used to mixing with a lot of heterosexual people without your family. People still ask as well, so I'm debating here. People often don't understand why so many queer people don't have family support. Actual blood family support. And that's obviously because they've either been ostracised by their family, which is quite common, or they've had to move around a lot. A lot of queer people had to move around a lot because you were persecuted. If you were persecuted, then you had to move. In the year 2000, I had to move home and become homeless because of extreme homophobia from my neighbours. And the police and the housing said it was my fault. And the police, the head of the police, whoever the head of the police is, I don't know what you call the head of a police station, whatever he is, he said, well, if you will walk about like that. Now, I worked in housing, and I worked in social care, so I wasn't, I'm not a part-time, I'm a very quiet person. I don't even drink, you know what I mean? So all these, so you're bringing all this stuff with you. The people, when you get to, so you don't have the family support. A lot of places don't understand found family, and they'll say, who's your next of kin? This happened to me really recently. Someone asked me for my next of kin, and I gave them my found family nearest friend name, and they said, who's that? Is that your sister? I said, no, it's right. Oh no, we need somebody who's... I said, no, we need to have somebody who's related to you. Oh, they are related to me. So there's one of my female friends, and we have an agreement, I just tell people she's my sister, and things like that, because you have to do that, because it's things like that. So they don't understand why they get family support. People were either ostracised, or they had to live very itinerant lifestyle, and they lose those connections, because even living in bed sits and stuff and things like that, and you had to move all the time to do that. So they don't have that. They don't understand why a lot of older queer people have health problems, because they couldn't access health services, or they didn't want to access health services. In 1988, I broke my ankle quite badly. I had to go to the hospital with the ankle, and while I'm sitting in this room with this doctor, who was very nice, and he's flicking through my file, and at that time it was still big paper files, and he's just flicking through this file as the nurse is bandaging, I'm doing something to my ankle, and he says, oh, I see you're homosexual. Now, I didn't know that was in my records. It didn't bother me personally. I didn't know that was in my records. Now, he was just saying this as, point of interest. He wasn't saying anything. But, Somebody at some point wrote that in my medical records, which is still there. And that's why gay people didn't access health services, any sort of health services. And certainly going to a health service where perhaps it was something sexual, if no chance. So people would live with health problems. I know someone who had a very severe health problem and felt they couldn't access their very, very good works health thing, because if they found out they were gay, then they would just get persecuted at work. And that's only like 15 years ago. They said, no, I'll get driven out of the factory. I said, so what are you going to do? I don't know. I said, but if you go to your private thing, it's a private thing, it's really good, you have to wait. And that was somebody who needed, really, 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 really important medical intervention, and they couldn't do it. So people perhaps have had itinerant lifestyles. Their health may be less than the general population. Lots of people have less money because they couldn't get jobs, they were ostracised out of jobs. I knew a queer person who got sacked when they found out they were queer and they worked in the stables. And that was legal. Remember, it was legal to sack queer people up until recently, up until the Equality Act. It was legal. You could sack people just because they were queer. Regardless, just because you didn't like them, you could sack them. So they perhaps haven't had those opportunities to amass funds and amass money that other people have had. And that there are lots of people who luckily went away to university, and you find that within universities the queer population tends to be higher than the general public because it's a means of escape. But we're not all educationally great, and some of us couldn't go to school. I was more or less driven out of school by the bullies, so for the last 2 years of my schooling I was very rarely there, sort of stuff. So the idea of studying and sitting exams when if you don't get your O levels and A levels, you can't go to university. You've got to find other ways. And if you're on your own, you've got to find a job, any job, that pays anything. It's got to be something you can walk into. In the past, when I was young, it was easier because you could just walk into a job because there wasn't a legal thing, but you got paid a pittance and you ended up living in a bedsit somewhere. So there's all these issues that perhaps a lot of the general public don't have, that someone elderly and queer is carrying along with them, plus this history of persecution and history of trauma. And trauma and all this trauma is sitting with them for years. And trauma can be triggered by anything, absolutely everything. So here you are, you're suddenly 82 and you need to go into a care environment or have people coming into your home. So you're not used to having people coming into your home. You have these very nice people coming in, and again I've seen it, people coming in who are very nice with crosses round their neck, want to pray for you. A lot of care workers came from overseas, and a lot of care workers hold religion close to them. Some care organisations are religious. If you live in a rural community and your only care home is run by, the Church of Scotland or the Frees, we Frees, what you do, and they have church services, So you get people coming into your home who again make assumptions. Why have you got this? Who are these pictures? What are this? What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Who are looking through things, who do things. So you go into the care home, but then you have to go into the care home. And in the care home, suddenly you're with all these other people. Now, again, in rural communities or in other communities, if people have stayed in communities, I'm 83. All the other people in the care home would maybe be 83. So the man who kicked shit out of me when I was at school was in the next room. I've known this to happen. Somebody that's traumatised me when I was a kid is in the next room. And no one can think why this is a problem. Why I don't want to go and sit in the day room, why I don't want to do this, why I don't want to do all these things. So you have all these things that can affect people that don't really affect a heterosexual society. already. These are before you even start, before you even in this. And I know that loads and loads and loads of straight people would hate the idea of going into a care home. My dad is dead, my parents are dead, my dad would have hated a care home. My mum went into a care home, she loved it. She loved it because she could be horribly shite to all the staff. And at 6 o'clock new staff came on, she could be horrible to them as well, because that's what she was like. You know, whereas my dad would have been, I would hate a care home, I would hate it, but I also know friends who really would quite like it, you know, quite like that environment. You know, they might not want to do it, but they quite like the environment. So you're going from a situation where you've been keeping your head down, you've been nice and quiet, it's been ingrained into you that you are not part of society, and that's very difficult to leave, even though things change. And suddenly you're in this situation where you're the centre of attention. People are trying to be very nice and overwear. People will unintentionally out you because it's in your records. You know, I've got a new man in number 4, he's gay. So can, you know, just like tell all the staff, you know, that don't say anything, blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, Mrs. Jones says, oh, it's a man in number 4, it's a new man in number 4. Yes, I have, but he'll not do you, Grace, you don't get a boyfriend, you know, he's on the other side, you know. And these are just people having conversations. And suddenly you become this object of interest. And there's an expectation that you will share. There's an expectation that you will involve yourself, and there's an expectation that people can come and ask you anything. Now this is something that happens throughout queer life, anyone of any age. Heterosexual people have this idea that they can ask queer people anything. We're like some little slot machine. And they'll come up, I mean it happens all the time, it still doesn't happen as much to me because I'm older, but it still does happen. And you get total random strangers just coming up and asking you sort of things that you wouldn't think of asking anything else, you know. I've had total strangers asking me to diagnose medical problems that they've had. I've had, in pubs, it's amazing, men whip their bits out all the time. Can you just look at this, son, what do you think this is? You know, I've done like that. I was on the train recently, the wee local train from Partick into town, and this young guy was sitting across from me, kind of student-like guy. And he leaned forward, you know, and did like this, you know, he said, can I ask you something? I said, yeah, He says, how do I cure crabs? You know, it's like, I'm queer, I should know these things, you know, it's like, you know, stuff like that. But also people ask you things about sex all the time. You know, I had a woman stop me in the street once and ask me, you know, why did she bleed during anal sex with her husband? You know, anyway. And it's, I mean, those are extreme, but also anything beyond that is even to the fact that people will say things, do you think these curtains match? Because, like, you're queer, you'll know do these curtains match? You know, because well, ask David, because, you know, he'll know, you know, so it's just fun, it becomes funny, but it is what happens. And there is this over-emphasis on your sexuality, which doesn't happen anywhere else. And if you think among elderly people, there's actually an under-emphasis on people's sexuality and sexual well-being. You know, there is apparently, I know someone whose daughter-in-law works in elderly care as a nurse, and she says the rise of STDs and things in elderly care homes is very high. At the moment, she says it's just they're all shagging around this. But she says the staff are trying to close it down as opposed to deal with it, and she's going in to try and educate and deal with it. She says, but the staff keep trying to close it down. Whereas as soon as a queer person arrives, it's sort of like, right, we must deal with this. They want to have sex. We'll have to deal with the sexual bit of it. Well, they want to watch porn. They want to watch gay porn. They want to watch that thing. They want to watch This Is Life or whatever it's called. They want to watch this. They want to watch all that. No, you know. So there is an over-emphasis on sexuality. You know, we'll put rainbows up in your room for you. And these things happen. They happen all the time. It's people think they're being kind. So it's really, really, really stressful for anyone to go into care. It's really, really stressful for anyone to have care in their house. But if you've been an ostracised member of the community, and if you've had to keep yourself safe, and if your house is a very safe space, now I know all our houses are mainly safe spaces, but if our house is a particular safe space, letting anyone into that is very difficult. Letting anyone in who even will do something like needs to come in saying do your cleaning, and they're in the hall cupboard getting the vacuum out, and you think, what are they doing? What are they doing? And it's this person of authority. Because, you have to remember that we were targets for all our lives, and we were targets for anyone, absolutely anyone. We had no rights, literally no rights. We were the lowest of 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 the lowest. Do you know that in the concentration camps, the Jews had to wear yellow stars. There were different symbols for different people. Like there was green squares and stuff. And gay people wore a pink triangle. I don't know if this will come out. Gay people wore a pink triangle, right? The communists had purple triangles, but in the rain, the purple got washed out to pink. The communists complained to the Nazis that people started thinking they were queer, and the Nazis went, oh my God, and they changed it. And if you look at any history of the Holocaust, it says that queer people were the worst treated in thing. And that's an extreme case, I know. But in general society, I was a target for everyone. Every single day from the age of about 13 till about, I was 40 odd, I got abuse every single day. Every single day. Every single day. And that was from anyone. Now, this wasn't, what people don't understand is this wasn't from horrible gangs of Neds. This was from nice people. Nice people. And it's like, now trying to find someone who would admit to being homophobic is like trying to find a Nazi in Berlin in 1946. It wasn't us. So anybody could do anything and nobody would do anything. People could literally attack you in the street and no one would do anything. People would join in. People would blame you. People would do anything. I was stabbed with a knitting needle on the bus by a woman going to the bingo with her pals, and they all thought it was hilariously funny. And then one of their pals got on at the next stop, and they were all like, oh, guess what Jean just did? She stabbed that boy with that needle. Oh, Jean, what you like? So, and they all went to the bingo, and I went to the hospital with a pierced liver. And there was nothing I could do about that. Nothing. I had children could throw things at you, workmen would shout at, people would do U-turns in the street to throw things out of cars at you, shout abuse at you. People would pour cartons of orange juice through your letterbox. People could do anything. And people would see this, people would hear this, people would do it, and nothing would be done. Nothing would be done. I remember once at school, and it wasn't me, and I wish it had been me, one of the other guys, one of the teachers, and this is another thing, it wasn't just, so it wasn't horrible people, at school it wasn't just other pupils, it was teachers as well. The one teacher, they were talking about, in history once, they were talking about something, I can't remember how you got into this subject, we were quite up then obviously, and it was the history of London or something, and there was something about brothels. And it said there were male brothels as well. So of course, being kids, this was funny. And the teacher said, and they used to call male prostitutes Mollies. This was the thing, they called them Molly. And he started calling me Molly. So the kids started calling me. So it wasn't just horrible people, it was everyday. It was your neighbours, it was your auntie, it was your nice auntie, it was your granddad, it was your mum, it was like your kids. People say my kids wouldn't do that, because you were just allowed to be a target, the whole time. So you've got all this, you're coming with all this past of keeping yourself safe, keeping away from people maybe, having barriers or interacting with the people that you're safe with, And suddenly you're in an environment where a total stranger comes through your door in this care with a clipboard and say, hello, I'm Jeanette, I'm your new care worker. Can I just take all your details? Well, I've already given everything to Kate. Yeah, but I like to get it from the person myself, get a wee feel of what you really want and what you like and stuff like that. And right, okay. And all this is because, I need help to go to the toilet. All that stuff. I think I'll just kill myself, literally. I'll just kill myself, okay? And, oh yes, a lot of the queer people who come in here do actually kill themselves because they're depressed. So there needs to be some sort of inbuilt training that goes along when you're training. Now, care work is appallingly underpaid. The average wage for care work has actually fallen in the past 10 years. It's gone down, and it was never that great to start with, and it's gone down, to I think, it's gone down about £2 an hour on average, and it's not that big to start with, very, very low paid. It used to be that you could literally walk in off the street and get care work, because you needed no qualifications and everything. And I've seen that happen when I worked in care work. I saw that happen. Someone literally coming off the street and was doing a shift that afternoon. Just, hello, I need a job. Oh yes, here you are, who are you? So you can think of all the abuse situations that happened. So it needs to be part of care workers now training. You have to do SVQs, I think, now in care work. So it needs to be inbuilt part of the training. It needs to be part of inspection and registration for all services. That's, sort of in-house services, but also services that go into people's houses, that they have to hit these standards. Now, a lot of organisations produce things that they call toolkits, which are sort of guidelines, but that's all they are. And a toolkit lies under your sink, Some, even to use that euphemism, oh, the shelves fell down, well, you got a hammer under the sink, I'll get Harry to do it, I can't be bothered, Toolkit of how to treat gay people. And again, we've got to have a separate thing, it's like, it's ridiculous. So there needs to be intense training and awareness made amongst people about that. A lot of people come into care, into any situation with a lot of issues. And aged queer people come with a very specific set of issues based on all this historical experience that they've had. Usually very negative experience that they've had. There's also the fact that when you go into a care situation, particularly elderly care situations, they are very gender specific. Very, very gender specific. I've seen care situations where there are card schools for the men, where there are knitting groups for the women, where there's gardening for the men, where they have little shopping days and hairdressing days for the women. They're very traditionally gender specific. So if you're just anyone who does, now if you don't want to do that, if you're a woman and you don't want to do the knitting group, you sit in your room and everybody talks about you, If you're a man and you want to do the knitting group, if you're a man and you don't want to do the card school, you're just isolated in your room, and it's your problem. It's you become the problem. And as I said at the beginning, because staffing levels are very low, and there's a big shortage of staffing at the moment as well because we've lost a lot of overseas workers, they try and herd people together, get everybody into the day room, and then we can watch them, if anybody falls over or chokes on their dentures or something. If you want to stay in your room, if you just want a nice wee quiet life, you're causing problems. Now that's for anyone, but if you can't mix with people, if you go into the room and you're sitting with 5 other guys and they say, oh hello, I'm Harry, I'm blah 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 blah, so you're in here, so are you from here, so is your wife dead? Don't have a wife, I had a husband but he died. Right. And that can literally bring everything to a standstill. Then you get them telling the staff, we don't want him. And the staff saying, well, you can't say that anymore. We can't do that anymore, that's ridiculous. And then they come to you and say, you know, we take this very seriously. You know, we have a very good complaints policy, here it is, and you can challenge anything and do that. I don't want to spend my life challenging things. I don't want to complain about things. I hate complaining about things. I'm very good at it, but I want to sit in my room and read my book, and for you to come in and change my conscience pad. You know, and I want to be warm and I want to be safe. You know, and when I go out there, I don't want people to stop talking. You know, and I don't want to challenge things all the time. It's not, I shouldn't be challenging it. You should be challenging it. And this is it. There is this thing where they keep putting the emphasis back on the queer person, that will give you the tools to do this. No, I shouldn't have to do it. I shouldn't have to do it. It's like that thing, remember that thing that awful thing they used to say that women contribute to negligence? You know, if you go out in a short skirt, it's your fault, darling. If, you know, some guy, you know, jumps you, you know, sort of stuff. And with queer people, it's like that at the moment. It's like, we'll give you all the things. If you don't do it properly, if you don't do it, well, if you won't complain, then it's not, we can't do anything about it. If you don't do it, you know, they're saying things, well, if you don't complain, you won't use the complaints procedure. We can't do anything about it. If you don't do this, if you don't do that, you know, it's all put back on you. You've got to sort it. So what do? You just be quiet. You shut yourself off. You think, I can't live here. I'll do anything to get out of here. I'll crush up all my pills. I'll go and sit in the park all day. You know, I'll do that. So it needs to be inbuilt into care support plans, into workers' very first day of these are issues. You will look at groups, and this isn't just about queer people. I'm sure it covers lots of different groups that are marginalised or lumped together, or I can't think of the word. You know, where people make presumptions about. You know, we're having, you know, I'm sure Muslim people, I'm sure Jewish people, I'm sure whatever going into care environments, mixed care environments, you know, get the same sort of thing, you know, where they're treated differently, as opposed to seeing the person and seeing what their issues are. So we then look at, should there be queer-only situations? Should there be queer staff going in? If I need care in my home, should I be able to insist that I get a queer person coming in to help me? Should I do that? No, I'm not bothered about that. What I'm bothered about is I want somebody who I know I can trust. What I want is I know someone who has done their training. I want someone who's not going to ask stupid questions. I want someone who's going to be nice and friendly and kind. You know, or who, if they do make a mistake, and people make mistakes, we all misspeak, we all say the wrong things all the time. You know, I called someone who was trans a lady recently because I was tired and it came out my mouth, and it was like, and I had to apologise. I'm sorry, just came out, sorry, I'm so tired, I'm sorry. You know, and they just laughed and said, well, at least you recognise that, you know, other people haven't. You know, people make mistakes, and you can do that. You don't want things, well, we all want things to be perfect, but we know that things aren't, and you want to muddle through and get through. But, you know, I don't need a queer person. It would be nicer, it would be better, but I don't want that sort of positive discrimination. Is there a role for an organisation that only provides queer support? Probably, but it would have to be very clear what it's doing. You have to remember that the queer community is very good at supporting itself, particularly, you know, when we had to deal with AIDS. We showed the world how to do it, you know, but even during that period we were persecuted like mad, and, you know, and half the time we weren't allowed to do it by ourselves. We weren't allowed to visit our friends in hospital because we weren't blood relatives, you know. We weren't even allowed to stand outside the hospital. I was moved on by the police outside, you know, the hospital where someone was dying. But this wee volunteer woman was allowed in with a big cross on, came back out and said he's doing well, and we said a wee prayer. You know, I was moved on because the family complained. I was just standing there outside thinking, he'll maybe know I'm here as my friend dies, you know, sort of stuff. We weren't allowed to do that, you know, sort of thing. So, but we showed how to support people. We showed how community, we're good at this. I mean, we had a big, there was a coming out again ball. A lot of older people do go back into closet, and there's a coming out again ball thing. It started in Australia, and it's just celebrated getting older and queer and being together. And National Theatre of Scotland did a project for 2 years where we were basically having these dance clubs together, and at the end of it we were going to have a big ball. However, COVID came, and we thought, what will we do? And we thought, well, we'll do the dance clubs online. And people say, you can't have a dance club online. Well, it blossomed into this enormous thing where people from all over the world joined, because it was great. People could come in the living room and dance around the living room. We didn't even have to dance. It was just such a laugh. And at the end of it, in 2 years, we had an online ball, which was the most marvellous thing in the world. And even the very fact that it existed, Sue, was marvellous. And I was saying, see, 10 years ago, this would have been all over the Daily Mail. You know, poofs are taking over the internet. You know, dancing, men with glitter on. You know, women dressed as men. You know, the children could have been watching. You know, the dog's upset. You know, all these things. You know, and at the end of that, you know, they asked me, because I'd been involved, they asked me to make the closing speech. And one of the things I was saying was, you know, we sort of looked around and we realised all this lockdown stuff, we're good at this. We can do this. We are good at looking after one another. We are good at sorting out situations. We are good at supporting one another. We are good at creating appropriate support systems that do not overstep the mark and don't interfere. We know we're not friends. We know we're all very diverse. And I know I've met more fascists in queer organisations than anywhere else. You know, lots and lots of them. You know, but you know, we know that, but we know how to do this. So maybe, yes, there is a role for queer organisations to provide support. Is there a role for queer care homes? At the moment, I think there is. I think it's certainly an option that should be available, you know, to people. And I think it could be, even to look at it very cynically, it could be a money-making venture for some. You know, a lot of these care home environments now, unfortunately, are big money-making things. So I think, you know, some businessman or woman, you know, would say, you know, well, I'm going to set up a care home for queer people. In fact, I'll charge them more. I would pay more. I would, you know, whatever the council or whatever the government pays towards my care. If I had to pay another £100 a week to live in a queer care home, I would do it. You know, just because I know, not because I would like it. I would serve all the care home issues, but I knew I wouldn't be dealing with all this shit. I wouldn't have to say. Before I even woke up in the morning, I wouldn't have to be thinking about what am I going to have to deal with today. I knew that I could just deal with being in care, if you like, which would be horrible anyway, but I would deal with that. So I think, yes, there are a place for those. There's very recently a queer housing association opened in London, you know, which is providing housing simply for queer people. And it was interesting again how much of that information just went out there, and that was it. It's so interesting that we don't cause a stir anymore. You know, that things have changed so much. It is so it's so bizarre. To someone my age, it is bizarre that, you know, things like there can be queer housing open in London and it's literally they're not rioting in the street. Because 20 years ago, you know, there'd been questions asked in Parliament. You know, it would have been unreal. It would have been on Newsnight. It would have been everywhere. They'd have been it would get burnt down. It would get burnt down, and everybody went, well, it's their own fault. See, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It is just so weird that things are a lot better. And it's fabulous that the younger people don't have to deal with the issues that we had to deal with, the abuse issues. But it must be really difficult now, I think, being queer, because there's so many options, so many things. There's no How do you find your way through life when you can be whatever you want to be at any time? I just think if you're young, you do need some structures, sort of stuff. Not I'm saying that people should be caged the way we were, but you need some structures. But not having to deal with the public abuse, shall we say. There's lots of private abuse. That school kids can be dreadful to one another. They are dreadful to one another. And, so there's lots and lots of persecution still goes on in schools. But for a lot of other people, it is easier. I drove past a school with my friend recently, a high school in Glasgow, and it was lunchtime and all the kids were kind of standing about outside having their Greggs sausage rolls and things. And I said to her, turn back, turn back, turn back. So I said, drive back, drive back. And outside the school gates, right outside the school gates, there was a group of about 7, say 15-year-old boys, just ordinary 15-year-old boys, standing having their lunch, one with a flag behind his back, and 2 of them were holding hands. And I actually wanted to cry. I wanted to take a picture. And this was right. And I know this sounds stupid to say it even for me, they didn't look queer, do you know what I mean? They just looked like all the rest. It wasn't like, you do get people who want to look a bit different. They didn't, they just looked like these groups of high school boys, And that's fabulous. That is fabulous. But I'm sure there are other kids who are getting persecuted and stuff like that in private. And what happens in families is very private, that goes on. But the big change when the Equality Act came in and suddenly the law was on our side, it took us a wee while to accept that. It took us a wee while to realise that wasn't a joke. That wasn't, because it's just suddenly, what do you mean? I've got rights? No. So if you look back to sort of like the first 2 years after the Equality Act came out, which I think was 2016, I can't remember, there's lots and lots and lots of people making complaints about very minor things. I mean, like queer people making complaints about very minor things. That guard on that train wasn't nice to me. That guard, it was disrespectful, and that was because we could. It was like we're testing the water. It was like, it's unreal. And there's this story I tell about, certainly even young queer people say, well, I didn't understand this. Many years ago, I was in a pub, and it was a sort of a sort of gay-friendly pub they used to be called. Not a gay pub, but a gay-friendly pub. And there was big booths, like these big booths. And I was sitting in this booth with some friends, just having a drink after we'd been somewhere. And there was a group of guys sitting behind us who'd been to the rugby. And one of them said something, which I didn't actually hear, but they said something about, probably all for the puss or something. And it all kind of kicked off a wee bit, right? The barman asked us to leave. And that's what was acceptable then. Now, they would get chucked out. And that is such a difference. That is bizarre. In my mind, that's totally bizarre. It is. It's like living in this alternative universe, and people don't understand that, because I still have ingrained those years and years and years and years and years of what it was like before. And I still do things. I was out with my pal Betty the day before yesterday, and we were talking about something. She says how she didn't notice things. I say, I notice everything, Betty. I've got to scan the horizon. I can see trouble coming miles away. I said, queer people make great court witnesses because they see everything and they know everything. Because you've got to be able, there's a man there, there's another one there. Oh, who's these two? What's happening there? How do I get out of here? We know every escape route. We know where every exit is. Still, when I get on the bus, I tend to try and sit beside the emergency exit. Not because I'm going to jump out, but if you put the wee handle up, it sets an alarm off. And I've had to do that in the past, if something got really bad. And then the driver would come up, because buses then got to stop, and the driver comes up and I would say, I'm sorry, I did it. I could never say, I did this because he was causing me problems. I would say, I'm really sorry, it got caught on my bag or something, and the driver would usually say, fucking poof or something like that, but that would stop things. I still do that. I still go into rooms and know how to get back out of them. You know where every disabled toilet is, because you couldn't really go into gents' toilets very much. You had to, we've all got cast iron bladders, because going into a ordinary gents' toilet, you had to take your, God, there's bloody guys in, right, I'll have to wait, because if you went in, it could cause a problem. So, there used to be lots, we were, disabled toilets, as they were then called, were a great boon when they arrived. But all that's still in me, And of course it still happens, homophobia can still happen. People can't throw bricks at you now, they can't spit at you, they can't shout abuse at you, workmen can't shout abuse at you, school kids can't shout at you, and their parents do nothing, their parents literally standing with them do nothing. But people do other things. A couple of examples. I was on jury duty just before COVID, literally the week before COVID, at the High Court, and the jury was put in a wee room, and then we go through security into the thing, and every single day for the first 4 days, I was the only person who got my bag searched. And when I say searched, as in like he turned my purse inside out, my bag searched. And there was 2 security guys, it was only one guy who was doing this. And every day I had to wait while I was getting my bag searched. So it was me that was causing, I'm causing the hold up, what's the hold up? Oh, what's this? So on the 5th day, when this started, I just said, why are you searching my bag? I said it loud so that everybody, why are you searching my bag? This is the 5th day you've searched my bag. You've not searched anyone else's bag. The guy blanked me, totally blanked me. I says, is it because you're basically homophobic? And he went bright red. The other security guy laughed, some of the jury laughed. The guy gave me the bag back, nothing was said. See, so here's someone exhibiting this behaviour. Here's someone allowed to do it, unless I challenge it, I've got to challenge it, and when I do challenge it, nothing's done. It's just sort of acknowledged, we'll just get on with life now. No one's going to take him aside. I was walking down the street one morning, the street was quite deserted, and coming towards me was a youngish, maybe about 30 woman, with a dog, a wee dog, one of those extended lead things. And again, because you scan the horizon, I see her see me coming. And she looks the other way as though she's looking in the shop windows. And she presses the wee extended lead thing so that the dog trots across the pavement and is now blocking my way. And she's looking like this, but I can see that she's seeing. And what she's wanting me to do is step off and walk on the road. And now, in the past, I would probably have done that. I would have had to have done that. Because if I hadn't done that, that would give her permission to verbalise against me. She would, blah, 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 and do that. And other people would join in, it would be my problem. So I just stood still. I just stopped and stood there. And then, of course, she got to me, and the dog's lead was again, and then she went, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. Sorry, But no, she was doing that because she couldn't shout at me. She couldn't flick her fag at me as people have done. People set me on fire, people do everything, all sorts of things. People could do anything. I'm trying to make it sound bad, but I'm not trying to make it sound bad. These are facts. These are what happened. This is what it was like. So now that can't happen, people find other ways of doing it. You don't get served to shops. You don't, sometimes, people aren't helpful. They won't catch your eye. Sort of stuff. You can pick it up, just as black people can spot racism. I'm sure women can spot men who are a danger. I can smell homophobia at the other end of the street. I can go in anywhere, and sometimes people will say, I'll say to people, no, just go to this till. Why do you want to go to? No, we'll go to this till. There's no doubt. No, we're going to this till. Just leave it, sort of stuff. It used to be, and again, I still do this. Good thing right here. If you and I were, say, going into anywhere, say you and I were going to a pub or going to a restaurant or anywhere, I would step back and let you go through the door first. Because when the door opens, people look up and then they look down. If I go first, people look up and they keep looking. So I needed that wee bit of space. We needed that to be over. And by the time they looked down, I could then come in at the back. So I was always at the back. I was always last in, last on. You couldn't be first at anything, and stuff like that. So all that is slowly changing, but it's still underneath there. So you, say, work in a care environment, you've been there for 25 years, you're a member of your local church, you disagree with everything that the government does, and I worked in care, and I was a senior manager in care, and some workers, you think, the worst problems I had was with workers, not with the staff, I had one worker who, when like legislations and things would change, she would say, "Well, I'm just not doing that. I don't agree with it." And you go, "It's the law." Well, I don't care. I'm not doing it. So I know what it's up against. I also know how difficult a job it is, how utterly challenging a job it is, and it is possibly one of the very few jobs where you're not allowed to really be yourself, because other jobs, regardless of what's happened in your life, you've got to go in, you've got to be nice. I used to say to, when my sisters were alive, my sisters would say, "Well, it's kind of easy, you just kind of talk to people, don't you? I said, "Look, see, you go to your job," and one of them worked in a cash office. I said, "You could go to your job with a hangover. You could go to your job, you could fall out with your husband and go in a foul mood and stuff." I says, anything could be happening to my life, and I've got to go. So I know how difficult care work can be, how really difficult care work can be. But there are lots of people who are there who are ingrained in a system. And the system still, the first thing you have to do when you training is health and safety, right? Which usually includes things like how to revive somebody who's choked to death and all that sort of stuff. See, when I joined care work, the very, very first course I was sent on was pin down. Do you know what pin down is? How to wrestle someone to the floor and sit on them. That was deemed the most important thing. The most important thing that I learned. And there are still people in care who are taught that, and still people who call it. It's called different now. We don't call it pin down anymore, it's called something else now, but it's still there, still in your training. And of course there's some people desperate to use that. So you've been there for 30 years or 20 years or whatever, or you've just started and you've just come from where, I don't know, let's totally be xenophobic here, say you've just come from the Philippines, where you've been brought up in a very religious background and a very you're a lovely person, but you think God is beautiful, and on your first day there you're presented with this queer man whose husband sometimes comes and visits them, and they have to stay, they're in the room together with the door shut, and you're supposed to be, So it's difficult. I know it's difficult from all sides, but it shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't be us to sort it out. So often it is the queer person, like with any minority group, and to call us that, it is the minority group who is forced to do the education. And that shouldn't be the case. Why should we have to educate you when what we're dealing with is your prejudices and your problems? And that was another thing that I said recently at the end of the ball, when they said, one of the things that this lull gave us, with lockdown, was it gave us time to look around and see all the things that we did do. And we saw that the queer community was spending a lot of its energies and a lot of its time in educating the masses. And what we have sort of decided, or what seems to have happened, is that we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to live our lives. And the rest of the world can sort out its problem, because it is the rest of the world's problem. And that is a big, big change, because in the past it was our problem. And we were told it was our problem, and we were the problem. And what we are saying now is, we're not the problem. You're the problem. You sort this. If you have problems, you sort this. We are going to carry on with our lives, and we will raise issues that are interfering with that, but it is for you to sort, not for us to sort. So I'm hopeful that things will get better. However, it's constrained by finances, like everything at the moment. Everything is just so constrained by finances. I'm hoping that awareness will be raised, but I don't know how that's going to happen. What we maybe need is, if we are involved in the educating the masses, we maybe need older queer people who are not in care to go in and talk to staff, just to even talk about things, just to even say, well, look, this might be an issue, you know, this is why they've all got cough, why they've all got TB, because they all lived in horrible bedsits, you know, this is why there's no money, this is why they, yes, they still smoke or they drink quite a lot, because people who are poor tend to smoke, drink a lot because their life's miserable, you know. This is why they don't tell you things. This is why they won't do this, you know. This is why they can't do this, because they don't know how to do it, you know, sort of stuff. Or, you know, this is why they want to do things for themselves, you know. It's just, you know, there are reasons. It's not just they're being an awful person, you know, they're not being uncooperative. This is why they're being secretive, or as you say, secretive. They're protecting themselves, because there's this history there. So maybe that's part of education that could be done, you know, but that needs to then be picked up by the organisations and by straight society of saying, right, that bit of input's been put there, we need to keep that and we need to develop from that. Not, oh, here we've got more people, can you do it again? No, we've trained you work by osmosis or whatever it is. You, because it's not our problem, it's your problem. You sort it. So that's me, I think. I think I've rabbited enough.
I've one question.
That's right, yes, sorry.
I was very interested in this idea of perhaps having queer homes run by queers.
Yeah.
Could you just explain that concept to me a bit more?
I think it's, you know, there are, how do you think of it? You know, there's a big organisation which runs homes for older actors. You know, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called something like the Older Actors Home. And all, if you get elderly and frail and you've been an actor and stuff like that, you go into these homes. The reason for that, mainly, one of the big reasons for that, is so that the actors don't get harassed by people all the time and get made a centre of attention, that their care just gets dealt with. Plus they can live a life that they're maybe used to. And living an actor's life, although much like anyone else, also has different sort of time zones, it has different ways of dealing with things, it has different memories. You have different shared memories than most of the general public, because you've done all these things, you've met all these people, and you don't want to go into a care home and for everyone to say, oh, tell us about the time you met Sean Connery. You know, you want to maybe say, you know, oh, I worked with Sean Connery once and I did this and did it, and somebody else say, oh, I worked with him once, and stuff. Oh, I never worked with him, and, you know, I never worked with him, you know, so you just want to have these general everyday, because it's nice, that stuff. At a very basic level, that's why you want to be with other queer people, you know, that you want to be with other queer people so that you don't have to answer the stupid questions, so that it's all very relaxed and stuff like that. So being with your own tribe, and you hear tribe a lot, and the joy of a tribe is that a tribe is made up of a very diverse group of people. You get small ones, you get big ones, you get thin ones, you get fat ones, you get nice ones, you get not nice ones, you get pretty ones, you get not pretty ones, you know, you get, it's just, and that becomes a tribe. It's a family. We've stopped saying family, we've started saying tribe, because family gets, people get the wrong idea about family. So it's a tribe. You get found family, you get tribes. So you want to be with your tribe, and sometimes just being with your tribe is fabulous. And I'm sure, I don't know, I can be presumptuous here, but I'm sure there are times when you as a woman just felt just easier just being with a group of women. You know, sometimes, just in some situations, you just think, oh, it's just quite nice, just all women. There's stuff, there's a woman in here, I feel relaxed. You know, so being with your tribe in general, just because you think people get where I'm coming from. If you then have queer workers, or workers who have a knowledge of queerdom, shall we say, or identify as queer, that is another big hurdle. Now, again, within queerdom, you get queer people who are very religious, you get queer people who, you know, are very right-wing, you get, you know, queer people who are mass murderers, sort of stuff. You get very nice queer people. You get queer people who are pains and arses and never shut up, who think it's great to talk about this or that or anything. Within my tribe, there are people who I certainly wouldn't go on holiday with, and I'm sure you have friends that you certainly wouldn't go on holiday with, and I'm sure you have friends who, after you've been with them, you phone another friend and say, oh my God, I've just had 4 hours of her. Oh my God, telling me the same story again. Oh my God, what are you doing next week? Oh, I'm seeing her again. She's my best pal, but oh my God. So it's the same, within any queer. Not everyone's going to be the same, but if you've got the basic understanding of what life is like and you don't ask the stupid questions, and you've also got a basic knowledge of where someone might be wanting to go with something, what their aspirations are, even on a daily basis. I want to be left alone today, and it's not because I'm sad. It's not because of anything else. It's not because I've got a pain. It might be for anything. It's not because of whatever. It's not because I've fallen out with anybody. It's just because I quite like being left alone. And that's fine, Just, if you need anything, I'm around. That's fine. And a lot of queer society and queer supporters like that, it is not hands-on. It's like, if you need anything, I'm around. I'm here, And here could be, I'm 700 miles away in Paris, but I'm here. And that, I think, is difficult for people who come from a different sexuality to sort of match up with. And that's probably why, just in general society, you do get things like Jewish care homes. You get Jewish care homes, you get Muslim care homes, you get actors' care homes, you get all these sorts of things. Unions used to have care homes, you get miners' care homes and stuff like that. And that's because there was a sweet understanding of, right, we kind of get this, and the staff would usually come from that sort of environment as well. We kind of get this, so you're not cutting through all the, I don't know, it's just this collectiviveness, that's not a word, of just understanding what the other person is. And that can make a big, big difference. Because remember, you're going into probably the most vulnerable situation in your life. People say, when you're young and doing that, but when you're young, you think the world's going to last forever, and you just breeze through everything. Or you go and have a cry in your bedroom, or you have a tantrum, or you spend a whole week greeting because somebody's not looked at you, or you can't buy a pair of shoes, or you don't know what to do, whether to go to university, and then next week you're fine. But when you're old and you're vulnerable, and then your body gives up, because the body giving up is a big, big, big thing. When the legs go or the hips go, and you're furious, absolutely furious that you can't do things. You can't, furious that you need help with things. You're really, and you know that that's not going to get better. It's not like being ill. It's not like saying, oh God, I've got pneumonia, and they say it's going to take 6 weeks. Oh God. It's not 6 weeks. This is it, that's you. If you're on that chair and you're not getting out of it. My older auntie spends her whole day sitting looking out the window because she can't move. Carers come in the morning, wash her, put her there, and she just sits there. Now, she's very lucky. She has lots of friends, she has lots of visitors, she gets people in every day. But that's what her life is. She can't go out the back door. She can't go out the back door without assistance. Must be that like if you're having to do that in somewhere that is not even your home? Somewhere that maybe somebody else lived in and hasn't even been decorated because there's no money to do that. Imagine if this was a care home and I came in here and I had my grotto in the hall. Sue will tell you about the grotto later. You know what I mean? There's even things like that, that you're in a different environment which smells different, environment where they give you food that you don't want, environment where you're living with other people who maybe need a lot more support than you. And a lot of people, I presume a lot of people wouldn't want to do that. You know, I remember visiting a care home up in Springburn to do an assessment of someone who was wrongly placed. You know, because a lot of people I work primarily with people with, say, learning difficulties and stuff, although that stretched a part of my career. And a lot of people who needed support would be put into care homes because there's nowhere else for them to go. So I went up to Springburn, and it was lunchtime by chance when I went there, and they said, "Do you want some lunch?" And I went, "Fine." People were very nice. And I'm sitting at this table with this man, these two women and these two men. And one of the men clearly needed quite a lot of support, more support than the other people. And the staff members, and suddenly he was just sick all down himself. The poor soul, the poor man. And the woman turned to me and she said, the woman beside me, she says, "I have to put up with this every day." And she says, "And mate, we're not allowed to eat in our rooms." And I think, and she was like, you know, so I mean, there's wee things like that which affect whole society, you know, sort of stuff. So you're in a very vulnerable situation, you know, where you've given up your whole life, which without choice, because nobody chooses to go into a care home, you know, no one chooses to become infirm, you're being forced into this, you know, by your circumstances, either your financial circumstances or mainly your physical circumstances and your financial circumstances. No one chooses to do that. You know, and you're miserable because you've been forced into doing this, and you know how much we all love being forced to do things, and you're very, very, very vulnerable, and now you've got to start sorting everything out about queerdom and educating people, and you haven't a clue who's coming through. See, even if you know that the person coming through that door is queer, you might not like them, they might be an obnoxious sod. But if you know that they're queer, then you're not dealing with that. You're dealing with the obnoxious sodness, and you can complain. You can say, "See her that comes on at 5 o'clock. I don't want her in my room because she's an obnoxious sod. She just breezes in here, doesn't even knock. You know, she was going through my drawers and everything. You know, and they're not. And it's not like, oh, you're just saying that because she's religious." The queer thing's already, no, I'm saying it because she's not just sod. You know, if they're already queer, then they know it's just the person, you're not having to deal with all the prejudices and stuff. So I think somewhere, I mean, people go on about ghettoisation, you know, about what do we do about this, you know. I think what there needs to be is choice. I'm not saying every queer person should go into who needs a care home should go into a queer care home. You know, some people would hate it. You know, everybody would hate care homes, but somebody would hate that idea. But, you know, I think there should be a choice. It should be there as a choice. You know, or, you know, there should be some sort of thing that is some sort of provision made. And I certainly, for people coming into my house, or people coming into the home, you know, it should be, if possible, again, certainly with intimate care and stuff like that, it should be that people should be given the choice. Not that it would bother me much, but you know, I do know other people who it would make a big difference to them if they knew that I mean, one of my female friends, she recently needed, she lives up north in Forest, is it Forest? Is that a place up north? Yeah, and she had an accident, and she badly broke her arm, so she was like sort of incapacitated. You know. So she couldn't even feed herself or anything, you know, because of this. She was really bad, and this is during COVID. You know, and she needed somebody just to come into the house and kind of do things. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't clean the toilet. She couldn't do anything. And she said it was really vulnerable, because here's this queer woman living in a village, and she said, I just was so on edge. These people coming into my house, that what they were going to say. You know, and what they were going to, you know, and she's got a big camper van, and they're like, "Oh, you drive a camper van? Well, that's strange for a woman to drive a camper van." You know, it's like, "Oh, do you and your husband go out in the camper?" I don't have a husband. Never had a husband. Oh, right. You know, people just being chatty, you know. She says, but if I know the person coming in was queer, it would be, you know, you'd have those problems. I still hate them coming in, but, you know, have those problems. So that's why, you know, at times we need to have specific, you know, gender queer, gender-specific support and help coming in, because the issues are about queerdom at times, and not just about being a human being.
Thank you very much, David. We'll leave it there. That's been very informative, and it's been lovely listening to you.
Thank you. I hope it's of some use.